Welcome back. Today I'm really excited because I have spent, probably almost 20 years in media and entertainment at the cross section of technology. And one of the things I love most about working within that intersection is I feel like it's the real hub of creativity and innovation. There's so much around the way that technology has enabled new forms of storytelling. And I think most of us, if anything else during the pandemic, have grown in our appreciation for good storytelling. A lot of us have become addicted to some of our streaming services. We've been playing new games. We've been reading more books. We've been finding new ways to just experience more joy and entertainment and laughter at a time that is otherwise really challenging. So today I'm really excited that we're going to be talking to the founders of Aconite, and they're going to tell you a bit more about the company and their journey as entrepreneurs, and especially focus in on a new game that they've just released. Very much mixed reality, immersive storytelling. And I don't want to say too much. I'm going to let them tell their story because they'll do a much better job at it than I ever will. But it's really exciting from a design aspect, even from a kind of social issues, like how we deal with so many different things right now and always in life. So there are also female founders, and I'm especially excited about supporting other women tech and creative entrepreneurs. I like to support all tech and creative entrepreneurs, all entrepreneurs. But I think especially when there are certain parts of the industry that can be harder to break into for certain people, whether you're Black or you're working class and you're finding it difficult to raise capital for your idea, or you're just not part of the network of people that are making key decisions about what gets financed and what doesn't. So whenever I can, I would like to be able to provide a platform to people who are incredibly talented, who have great ideas that are really executing on them, that are making them happen. And so I'm excited to introduce you today to Nadia and Star from Aconite. Before I do that, we're going to see a video that will at least give you a little glimpse at what Ola Vista is like. That's their latest release, and let's check it out. Hi.
Hi, Angel.
Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks
I love that. Absolutely. I love that trailer every time I see it. And I'm so excited that it's finally out.
So are we.
I bet. So what I would love to do is hear a little bit from both of you, Star and Nadia, just about your journeys as creators and entrepreneurs and how you met, and then really the kind of source of inspiration in terms of forming Aconite and really the thinking behind Ola Vista, your first release.
So Nadia and I met when Nadia was working on Coil House, her magazine. And I came on board to help her with some web design. And, we became really fast friends, fast forward a bunch of time. And she worked for me for a little while at my agency. And then we did our first startup together, Zivity, which was a crowdfunding website for artists and photographers. And then, we decided to move on to another project because Zivity was not founded by us. That was like a startup that we ran that was founded by the excellent Cyan Bannister. Mm-hmm. And after that, we decided we wanted to kind of do our own thing and have our own little startup baby that we grew from the beginning.
I love the journey. I love that stage when you're like, it's just an idea and let's just see if we can, help this baby grow.
Yeah.
And so when you were first, kind of having some of the initial conversations, you'd obviously created stuff together before. So you kind of knew that you enjoyed working together, which is really important, for co-founders. How did the kind of conversation go about like, what should we really do? How did you kind of land on, this is what it's going to be? And how do you define it? Because I know, for example, if you look through some of the tweets, I think some people are like, is this AR? Is it VR? Is it MR? Like, what is it? So what were those kind of conversations like when you were still at the exploratory stage? And how did you get to the stage where you said like, okay, this is what Aconite is, this is what we're about, and this is how we're gonna, take our team, team of two to a team of more and, build something? How did you kind of really land on it?
I can take this one and start. Feel free to jump in.
Yeah.
But there were a bunch of converging trends that really inspired us when we were getting our start. And at the time, we were both involved in various like transmedia immersive art projects in our various communities, but we were just watching the way that stories get told completely transform, like at a much more accelerated pace than previously. Like, of course, there have been always experiments in gaming and new kinds of stories, but we were watching it just explode. Like on one hand, there was Sleep No More, immersive theater, people like going into a play that's like an open world interactive experience. You had escape rooms blowing up with people like escaping a room together by solving puzzles collaboratively. You had Pokemon Go, in which like people were capturing magical creatures like through AR in their everyday world. And you had, just so many interesting pieces of emerging tech coming out to support creators. You had a lot of new AR tools. ARKit and ARCore were like beginning to duke it out. And we were just like, wow, like the world is finally ready for stories on a scale never before seen that are truly interactive. And Star, I'm going to turn it over to you. But
yeah, like I think, taking sort of the back half of your question, Angel, like the way that we define mixed reality is a lot broader than I think a lot of other more tech-focused companies define it. We define it as anything that blurs the line between reality and fiction. So it's not just about AR and VR, but geolocation, immersive events, face-to-face stuff, interesting ways to bring, remote experiences together. Alternate reality is a big one for us. So just seeing so much more of the mainstream be able to plug into, transmedia and other forms of interactive storytelling really just kind of set a fire for us. Like, we've always been interested, but we didn't really think there was like a market until suddenly people were really plugging into some of these other alternate ways of telling stories at a massive scale. So we knew at that point that that was the time.
And it might be helpful to define alternate reality and transmedia for the audience.
Yeah.
Star, do you want to do this?
Go for it.
Oh, okay. Well, it's a really interesting storytelling tradition by which the story finds you across many different platforms. It's not like you go to the store and you buy this game. It sort of plays out across many different channels. Like, you might call a phone number, or you might go to a website and start digging around in the source code and find some secret link. Or you might happen upon a Discord where everyone is a character in this alternate world. It's like experiences where reality really kind of blends together with story, and experiences that aren't bounded to one particular medium. Was that a good definition?
Yeah, I think that about covers it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember when I was living in London and Secret Cinema had just started, you know, and amazing, right? And I went to the first one, and it was amazing. And
movie was it?
what's that? You know what? I don't even remember what the first one was, and I don't remember the last one that I went to. The last one that I went to was in, I want to say it was in Shoreditch, like maybe 2012. And I would have to remember what.
They were doing the Blade Runner one around that time. That was wild.
Right, they were doing Blade. I don't know if that would have been cool to do Blade. I don't think maybe I did. No, I didn't. I don't think I did Blade Runner. I have to remember what the last one was and the first one. But that just says more about me and my memory. But what I do, remember was, when I first got the invitation and I got my character, who I was and like generally how I was supposed to dress and all of that. And, I showed up to the venue and I had one other person that I had invited with me. They really limited, the invitations at the beginning. And I think they kind of broadened it a bit over time. And I remember, being in these different rooms, trying to piece together what story we were in, right? We didn't even know what film it was at that stage, right? And so, over time you're talking to different characters, right? And you're supposed to stay in character, but you're also like, do you know what we're in? Do you know? And then I remember kind of getting to, to the stage, and it was an old office building that they had it in. And then they showed the film like kind of in the center courtyard. So it was kind of outside. So we were inside and they showed it outside. And God, I wish I could remember which one I was. But I remember, just thinking like, God, how cool is that? First of all, we're all in like meeting in this real world, but it was basically virtual because we're all like in character, right? So it allowed us to kind of connect in ways that wasn't like, oh, where do you live? What do you do? Where are you from? All the kind of, as much as we try to get away from those formulaic introductions, a lot of times, we default to them out of discomfort or social protocol, convention, whatever. And so I really loved that aspect of it. And I loved not knowing what the story was and being part of the creation and evolution of the story, right? So that was, I think super, super cool to me. And then, I agree when, Pokemon came out, I was never into Pokemon and, my son wasn't into Pokemon, but I still downloaded it because I was like, I really want to like see what this is all about. And once I got into it, I was like, oh my God, I really like this. I was like going around and, and really just the possibilities of it were, really inspiring. So I agree. I think that there have been times when it's been uncertain whether it's a kind of one-off, or whether there's a true market where you can kind of build a business around. I know with Bebo, again in London, one of the things that we did is we launched one of the first, online original series. This is like pre-Netflix and, and all that. Yeah. And so I worked with the record labels so that we would basically work with their development artists and feature them into the storyline of, this online program that we had. But then we would have gigs where you would go and you would find out like, inside secrets about the next episodes, and people kind of like, Lonely Girl 13, right? We had something called Kate Modern, and people weren't sure at that stage what was real and what wasn't. Like, even if they caught on that the main character was not real, the band was real, the people that you were meeting were real, like, so I think, that alternative reality definition that you guys provided, I think provides, a form of kind of safe escapism, and then also a really cool new way to connect with people, because sometimes in anonymity we can be our truest selves.
Yeah. And in game design, that's called the magic circle, where you're creating an area where people can, try on different modes of being, right? Whether that's, something like a video game where you're playing as a character and you have to accept that character's viewpoints or, values. It can be stuff like LARP, where, you're a part of a different group of people with a different set of ideas about how things should be. It can be even something like Burning Man, where you're like playing yourself, but you're removing the world that you're used to and replacing it with something else. And I think people can really give themselves permission to try to be different than they are normally, and to experiment and play with, their viewpoint, their personality, all of these things. And it's a safe place, the magic circle, to be able to try on those ideas, where there isn't as much consequence to your action. And I think it's really important for us as a society, as thinkers, to have a place where we can experiment with what our ideas are, what our values are, who we are as people, especially now where the world has changed so rapidly that we don't even recognize it. Now is a great time to try on other worlds where we can do that safely in more ways than one.
Absolutely. I think, the polarization that has happened, not just in the US, but in lots of other countries, it's not just political, it's cultural, there's a lot of different aspects to that. And I think, we need to create more magic circles in everyday life, right? Because I think we're all changing on a cellular level every single day. So if we're changing on a cellular, level every single day, we are literally not the same human beings we were, the year before. So that, can mean that our values change or our perspectives change. And as we learn more and have more experiences, then I think, having these opportunities where, as you say, you can experiment and try things on and see if they fit. And, and that kind of personal discovery, there are not that many options other than like in your own head, right? And so I think, creating an experience like you have with Ola Vista, where people can do that in a really fun way. I just think, even if you're like, no, I know who I am, I'm like, I'll think about personal growth at another time. I just want to like check out for a little bit, it's fun for that too, right?
Absolutely. And
so you guys just released, right?
Yeah. On
And
the
so, yeah.
30th, which was 5 days ago,
So,
4 days ago, something like that.
Yes. Yeah, high five. So tell me a little bit about kind of, how it's going so far. I know a little bit, but I want you to be able to share the news with others. And also kind of, what it took to get to where you are now. And now that it kind of is in the market, not even a full week, what are you seeing so far that is really, either validating assumptions that you have or raising new questions, about what you've done so far, about how you might, move the needle, going forward? What have you kind of seen in the first week that's both encouraging or maybe even, surprising or illuminating?
Can I start and then?
Yeah.
Okay, so there was one really wonderful surprise / validation of assumptions that happened, which is that without spoiling too much, I just want to say that Hollow Vista is an experience that doesn't end when you download the app. It's not like you download the app, you play from beginning to end, the story's over, you're done. If you pay attention to certain things in the game, like, for example, someone might mention a phone number in the game, and you're like, oh, like, should I call that number? Yes, you should call that number. And what we've been seeing is a steady trickle of players coming in every day beyond the app into the greater world that we've built. And that's just such a wonderful feeling. That it kind of validates our thesis of, building many different experiences, all of which have back doors into one another that the observant player can find. And it's just been really wild watching those people come through the door.
Yeah, like the kind of grander vision for the company is to sort of have a number of different experiences that are all occurring in, if not the same universe, at least connected universes, where as we add more things to our library of titles, they'll kind of have larger reach into and out of each other. We're interested in building something that has fewer and fewer boundaries and edges, that gives us more opportunities to make new things that are sort of building on the old things, which is super exciting. There's only a couple of video game companies out there doing anything like that. Shout outs to Remedy for recently doing that with Control and Alan Wake in particular. I think that's pretty rad. As far as other things that have been encouraging, just like hearing people's thoughts about the game for the first time in a big, really public way has been really awesome. At this point, we're only, out less than a week, but like everybody has more or less only had glowing things to say. Like at this point, I was really expecting to have at least a couple haters, but they haven't really come knocking yet, which is surprising.
Yeah, the gaming community can be pretty harsh sometimes.
Yeah. And I was like stealing myself for that,
It's coming, don't worry.
Oh yeah. I'm sure that it will come. But I'm just grateful that the people that have checked it out thus far have all really found it to be a compelling experience. Like, it's really cool to have like more than one person in the App Store review say it made them cry. Like,
wow.
That's not something I was necessarily expecting.
No, well, the artwork alone makes me want to cry because it's so beautiful. I love it.
Thank you.
But yeah, if you can have that kind of emotional connection with people, I mean, that's hard to achieve a lot of times with any kind of digital form of entertainment. And I think, yeah, that's pretty meaningful if you can have that kind of impact. And I know, when, gosh, this was the late 90s, so I'm dating myself here, but when, we formed Gameplay, and, Gameplay is still around today. Now it's more focused on kind of e-commerce. But we had an online multiplayer gaming service, and it was really about the kind of community layer. And so you could, plug into lots of different massively multiplayer games, and it was very early days of, broadband connection. But, we decided more as a kind of marketing tactic, but also just to have some fun. We created a Remember Flash-based game.
I remember Flash.
Yeah, we all remember Flash.
Many good times with Flash.
Yes. Flash with friends. But yeah. And we created, this celebrity deathmatch. I think I might have told you guys this story before, but with Robbie Williams and Gallagher. Right. And that one was almost like mixed reality, because they were having this big public fight, right? And then they hear about the game, right? And then all of a sudden they're laughing and playing the game, and all the world is right? So
you created a little magic circle, or, I guess squared circle, for Liam Gallagher and Robbie Williams to be silly about their fight. It was a slapstick, cartoonish world that you created, and suddenly their very real beef became slapstick and cartoonish, and they could laugh at themselves. That's the point. You got it.
Right. Completely. And, I think, a lot of times, there have been times in my career, because, I started off as a public interest environmental attorney, and there have been times when I thought I'm so mission driven, maybe I shouldn't do this, entertainment stuff anymore. And then I'm like, no, I don't think that there's anything better than those kind of moments, right? Where you're taking something that is really bad, and then all of a sudden you're making people laugh. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And it can work in the reverse too, right?
Yeah.
I'm talking a big game about giving people permission to learn about themselves. And while that's the direction we took with Hollow Vista, there are games that, or other experiences that do the opposite thing and show you what it would be like if things were a lot more terrible, so that you can actually have an immersive experience in that terrible place.
Yeah.
Most recent example I can think of is The Last of Us 2, making someone experience something uncomfortable for a really long period of time can really change your perspective too. So the knife cuts both ways.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I think, in those scenarios, having those stories of and experiences of contrast definitely either give you gratitude for what you've got, or at least, give you an indicator of what you kind of want to avoid, for sure. But so where you guys are at now, you've got it kind of out there. You're getting a great response so far. The haters will come, but that will only be because so many more people know about it. So that's a sign of success, actually. What is your vision? I love how you guys are imagining, releasing titles going forward that kind of intermix with all these different touch points, that you're creating for the current players. So some are either texting or, calling, and maybe they're not, in the app. They're out and about. So, how do you see, will you start some of those in parallel, or do you have kind of certain milestones you want to get to before you start releasing more titles? What's the plan in terms of overall product roadmap?
I can start and then go. So ultimately, we want to not only create experiences, but also facilitate other teams creating them, so that it's a really scalable, wide universe of stories. And we felt that the best way we could do that is to build our first game ourselves, so that we would have the experience, so that we would cut our teeth in this industry and win the respect of our peers, and learn all of the ups and downs of game dev, which there are a lot of ups and downs, let me tell you.
Yeah.
And now that we've done that, we feel that we have the experience to usher other teams through this process. So our goal is to continue building out this world upon the experience that we just gained. And of course, we have to wait and see how Hollow Vista performs because, depending on how well it does, we may or may not have like a big opportunity there. But of course, we're going to try to do everything we can to maximize that. But it's like a little early to be making decisions because it's been out for 5 days.
Yeah.
Yeah. We need a nap first.
Yeah, we need 8 naps.
But like, to put a finer point on it, not to spoil too much, like we actually kind of shipped 2 games at once because there's Hollow Vista, but there's also like the greater universe behind that. And so there's like a whole separate experience that we worked on with the very talented Nick Tierce and Steve Peters to build. They're kind of like our first shepherding experience of bringing somebody else into the universe. And, we worked with them to make this sort of larger game experience that plays in tandem with the app.
Yeah. And when you're looking at some of the games designers and games developers, you've given a couple of examples of, titles and individuals that have been inspirational. Like, who are some of the others that you think are just kind of doing great things and are sources of inspiration for you guys? Or other storytellers outside gaming?
Well, starting in gaming, like, I'm a really big fan of Sam Barlow's work, who made Her Story.
Yeah.
The container for Her Story was just so unusual as a game and so accessible.
Yeah.
I think, making things that can reach different groups of people who maybe have different experiences with things like knowing how to use a controller well, or having like reaction time that is good. Like one of the things that we really wanted to do with Hollow Vista basically was ship a VR game without a headset that people could play without having to drop a bunch of money to explore a virtual world. So I'm really a fan of anybody who's like pushing those boundaries. The folks who made Kentucky Route Zero are really inspiring to me. Like, they're super great. They did this thing where they released their game in chapters, and in between each chapter, they did a little interlude that was like a mini experience in the environment. And one of these was like an actual play, like it shipped as a video game, but you were watching a play in the video game, which was really neat. Another one was like a phone tree experience where you call the number and we're like navigating this like recorded experience, which was really cool.
Yeah.
I also really love Simogo, who made Device 6, which is probably my favorite mobile game of all time. And most recently came out with Sayonara Wild Hearts, which is a really excellent endless runner rhythm game.
Yeah. I haven't tried that one. I want to check that one out.
It's super, super dope. You'll love it.
Yeah.
Nadia?
I'm actually going to take it really old school and say that
Do it.
Myst was one of my biggest inspirations for this game.
Yeah.
I remember getting that CD-ROM, also dating myself. I remember getting that CD-ROM and playing it and just being so lost in those worlds. Like, they got into my head.
Yeah.
And I just, every time someone compares Hollow Vista to Myst, like, I'm filled with joy because like it's such a different environment and the mechanics are completely different. But if someone can see that through line, it just makes me really happy.
Yeah.
Recently also, I was very much inspired by Disco Elysium, as was Star.
Yeah, it's so good. Like,
yeah.
I think it's like the best writing in a video game ever right now.
Oh yeah. Lots of tears shed over Disco. And just an incredible effort. They were very interesting with who they brought in for voice acting. There were a lot of inside jokes for people who are into politics, if you pay attention to who's doing the voices. And I really loved that because it's a very political game.
Yeah.
And finally, I have
in our house.
Deconstruct team for the excellent Red Springs Club, which is a pretty short game. It's a pretty traditional game as far as the format of games go, but it's so beautiful, and the music,
I don't know. I think I beg to differ on the format. Like, there's a pottery mini game. Like, I've never seen that before.
It's true. It's true. Yeah.
They also just put out a vinyl of the soundtrack finally, like years after the game came out, and the soundtrack is so good. So I'm just very stoked right now.
Yeah, I think the intersection between music and games now is becoming very, very interesting too, right?
Mm-hmm.
I also think I told you guys at Gameplay, one of our animators did the initial animations for Gorillas, and then went over and joined the team. And so we did a lot of the early kind of fan building within the gaming community, before, this was in the late 90s, before they became what they became. And then it was cool because later in my career, then I was at MTV, and we got to do the first live performance of Gorillas, right? With the holographics. And it was just super amazing. But, and then, we saw, live performances inside Fortnite, and there have been a lot of interesting ways. And I think, a lot of artists are now looking at games as a way to break into new audiences, to promote, new music. And so, I could see lots of artists being interested in collaborating with you guys in these, new immersive ways to be able to build new types of relationships with their fans. So, and some of the artists or music that you guys like, or that you guys think could be a good match.
Well, looking back on Hollow Vista, and Nadia, you can jump in. We worked with this really talented composer called Mariode, who they were my most listened to artists last year, and I'm just so thrilled to be able to work with them. They're part of the Desk Pop collective that does a lot of this sort of interdisciplinary work.
Yeah.
But also we worked with Little Michaela.
Mm-hmm.
She has a small cameo in our game, similar to Gorillas, the idea of like a virtual or fake musician.
Yeah.
She's carrying that tradition on along with Hatsune Miku and, a slew of other digital influencers that are all newer.
Yeah.
And that's all very exciting.
Yeah, for sure. Were you going to say something, Nadia?
Yeah. I was just going to quickly say that there's one particular genre that to me really shares a lot of DNA with Aconite, and it's PC music, short for personal computer music. And what I love about this genre is that there's so much world building in the in the personas of the artists. Like A.G. Cook, who was one of the pioneers of the genre, famously said that you don't need to have a exceptional singing voice to be a pop star. You just need to have something to say. And it's interesting to me because when they were first creating the mystique of the record label, they would do these things like they would create this pop star who was a regular person playing a character, but they would make it like she was already mega famous, like she already had millions and millions of fans. So famous that she's getting brand endorsements. Of course, she's not really getting brand endorsements, so they're like, great, we need to make up a fake energy drink that she is going to promote. So then she puts out a song called Hey Cutie, and like the fidelity of the brand grows and grows to the point that I think an actual energy drink eventually did get produced.
Right.
I'm not quite sure, but or maybe she got an actual brand deal with I think it's that Kim Kardashian copied the style of that drink and made a very similar one. Something like that happened.
Yeah.
The spinning up of tails, and the fans started treating those artists like megastars. because that's the game that they were collectively playing, which in turn brought more fans, and eventually those people did become megastars, such as Sophie and A.G. Cook and, you know, Charlie XCX, etc. So this is a fun, playful, slightly trollish world. And I love stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think, you know, one of this was a while back when Night in the Woods did they released Night in the Woods after the Indiegogo campaign. And I just think the artwork in that is really beautiful as well. I love the colors that they use, and I also love, you know, the characters, and it get, you know, for a relatively light storyline, it gets pretty dark, right? And I also like that, you know, that they're, you know, in terms of, you know, the different characters, you know, they don't necessarily have to go in head on in any educational way around, you know, gender and sexuality, but you just see these, you know, these characters kind of, you know, living out their relationships in their lives, and especially for younger players to be able to see that that's not the point of the story, right? You know, and they can kind of emerge through this like storyline in lots of different ways. And I remember when, you know, and not just that title, but, you know, other companies that have had success through crowdfunding, you know, at the time I thought like, gosh, you know, we kind of had that in some way years ago, but it was really like friends and family who were like, you know, here, we'll give you $1,000, or here, we'll, you know, and then you could kind of, you know, develop at least a level, and then, you know, Star, you gave the example of different chapters, and in some cases that was because that's all you had money to do rather than, you know, creative choice. So, you know, especially, you know, you guys are calling in today from San Francisco. I'm in Marin, and in the Bay Area, a lot of investors shy away from content. Sorry, I thought I had that off. A lot of investors shy away from more content-driven experiences or content-driven technology. And, you know, in SoCal, it's a little bit different because that's, you know, the whole industry there. And actually in New York, it's a little bit different too. And London, it's a little bit different. I feel like they're a little more skeptical here in London, but you guys have been really successful in, you know, securing the capital to, you know, to get the company up and running, to release your first title. You've got some good runway. You've got some great proof points, you know, for the investors that you have. Which is always reassuring, because, you know, bringing on investors into a next round is always preferable, and it's a good signal for other investors. So what has it been like for you guys as entrepreneurs trying to, you know, make that way through from having these ideas and having great, you know, creative background into people actually signing checks, you know, reputable early stage investors saying like, yes, we think you're a great team, we believe in you. Like, tell us a bit about, you know, there's lots of, you know, game designers and game developers that are out there that would really dream of creating their own, you know, game studio. And right now they're working for other people and they haven't, you know, quite done it. And obviously even the no code, you know, tools that are available now are making these dreams more accessible to people without having to raise capital. But tell us a bit about your experience in and building up that kind of consortium of supporters who are willing to back you financially so that you can create these amazing experiences.
Yeah. So in our game, there's the line that I come back to a lot. When Carmen is really nervous and she's getting ready for her job interview and she's just like shitting bricks because she's like, oh my God, like, am I gonna get this? Are they gonna think I'm too weird? Are they gonna think I'm too out there? Her friend Jazz, who's a lot more successful and established, tells her, remember, they're not just interviewing you, you're also interviewing them. And I think like that's the mentality that we had when we were putting together our round. And I just want to stress to any founder out there that you want a team that believes in you, that trusts you, that, basically you're rolling the dice for your investors and you're reporting back, how are the dice rolls going? And they have to trust you that you've done everything you can to put yourself in an optimal situation to like roll those dice. And, sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't, but you don't want to partner with the kind of people that are going to be like backseat driving your every move. You don't want to partner with the kind of people who are, second guessing your strategy or your vision. But at the same time, you want to listen to people because a lot of investors, they've done this. It's not their first rodeo. So it has to be like a really collaborative relationship with a lot of give and take and a lot of trust. But more than anything, like you're building real relationships. Like if it's a good investor partnership, they're not up in your business every day calling you like, how's it going? When's it going to be out? Why wasn't it out yesterday? But they're also not completely hands off. They don't just ignore you. They check in, they keep you accountable. They ask you how they can be helpful. So I think my biggest piece of advice is don't go into it with this like desperation of like, please, please, please give me money. I'll do anything you say. Like that's not going to result in a good investor founder relationship. And there has to be trust on both sides.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I've definitely been in, I feel like I'm sure that there are other scenarios that, that I haven't experienced, but, that trust in a relationship definitely needs to go, both ways. I know I've been an investor where I wasn't quite sure that I was getting the real story. And I've also been a founder where I felt like, what else can I show them? Because they're like nervous and I can only show them what I can show them because we're not at that next stage yet, And so, so I think that, that mutual respect and is really critical. And I think, the investors who can provide support and help when it's requested and to proactively ask, if you need what kind of support or help that you need, but aren't all kind of up in your shit thinking that they know how to do it. Because a lot of investors, have had a lot of success as investors. So they know like, okay, this is a good CAC to LTV ratio. And, and we're finding across our portfolio, this is a good customer acquisition channel. And this is, what they're doing and provide some real tactical, advice. But they're also, some of them haven't been operators for a long time. They either, became investors because they had a big win or maybe even more than big win. And then they've been investing for a while. So they've been out of the game as an operator, for a while. And also, unless you're doing it every day, you can't know what the real signals or insights are to make a lot of the key decisions. So I think that relationship that you described is a really, really healthy one. And when it works well, it works incredibly well. And that's when you see companies become very successful because the investors should really be part of the team, It's a particular type of role that they play, but they are part of the team, the investors themselves.
And we've been very lucky in that regard. I think it's just important to have an attitude of we're in this together. Our incentives are aligned.
And like when you're raising, right? Like my best advice would be like, be honest about what you're doing and what you're passionate about and what you're going to do. Like you want to find an investor that matches those ideas. And if you waver or bend to get a check, like that relationship is just not going to work out. It's like a marriage, like don't start the foundation in a dishonest way. Like you will attract the investors that believe in your vision. And any of them that come knocking that don't match up in that way are not the investors you want.
Mm-hmm.
because it's just going to be a fraught relationship the whole way down.
For sure. And so when you guys went about fundraising and as you continue, how did you go about building some of those relationships where you didn't already have access to some of those investors? Did you ask for introductions from other people that you knew? How did you, really go about it?
I mean, you have to be scrappy about it, like, especially because we're a female founder team, and statistically, like, you can look it up, that's not a great position to be in.
No, not in terms of raising capital, no. But in terms of performance.
Yes, 100%. That is absolutely true. And somewhat contradictory, right? Because this information's available to investors that
I feel like I have to, in fact, every episode I should probably just say it at the beginning, because I'm like, okay, here are the facts. Like, these are quantifiable facts. These businesses perform better. So
yeah. But like at the end of the day, like, it's a numbers game, right? Like, you have to hold on to your integrity and tough it out and just keep taking more meetings. Like, there were definitely several points in the very long fundraising process where we thought about throwing in the towel. And I know a lot of other companies did, like, at that phase. Like, the statistics are there as well, that, many startups don't even make it to their seed or through their seed round. Like, they'll get a couple of commits and then it fizzles out, right?
Yeah.
So for us, it was like any intro that we could get that was a warm intro, we would ask. Like, there was a lot of having to be humble and asking for things that felt beyond our station or like a reach. But those warm intros were very important. It's that much better than a cold email, and you just have to go after that voraciously.
I also feel like, I think I might be misremembering, but at least one person in the round was a cold email. And
I was going to ask, if you had any cold. So you did have one that came in as a cold.
Yeah. So
like, as much as I'm saying, like, get a warm intro, if that's not available to you, still take the shot.
Yeah.
It's less likely, but do it anyway, because the more shots you take, like, the more lottery tickets you buy, the more likely you are to win the lottery.
For sure.
Yeah. We had to take there were so many meetings. I have one other final piece of advice about this particular thing, which is, there's a really great book called The Elements of Style by Strunk and White, and it has a chapter on composition. And I highly recommend reading that chapter to anyone who wants to, like, basically, when you're fundraising, you're like a professional emailer. That's all you do.
Yeah.
So learn how to write really good emails that are only funny, short.
Yeah. And be organized. Even if you're not typically an organized person, like, have an investor tracker. Know who you've contacted, how many times you've contacted them, what that contact was like. Know what phase of committing, like, they are or not, and have all of that information available at a glance, and check it daily and update it daily.
Yeah, I agree completely. I'm on the board of a startup right now, and they're looking to raise, well, the lines have become blurry these days, right? But what would typically be considered an A round, and they've been, doing great, and so they're in a strong position going in. But this time around, I've been really kind of setting them up so we can have a bunch of tools that, as much as possible, automate a lot of that, that tracking and making sure that they're staying on top of the follow-ups. And there's no copywriter in the team yet. And I'm like, okay, we need somebody, even if it's on a freelance basis, to really kind of, because I agree with you, Nadia, you want to keep it as short as possible. But there's also almost a template approach to, to some of these. And so, but you also have to personalize it, right, in such a way that the investor doesn't feel like this is a blanket email that you've sent to any, investor, that you've really thought about why this is good for their portfolio, not just good for, you as a company. So
yeah, you need to do your homework, like know who you're talking to and why they might be interested. Like if you go into a meeting and you don't know that, you've more or less wasted the meeting unless you get lucky.
Yeah. Yeah. And that follow-up, I agree, like the tracking and the organization part, so important because, like you said, Nadia, you're having so many calls that sometimes it's like, like, I would like to see X. Sometimes, you can forget that if you don't have it down somewhere and if you don't have any like alarms or reminders set up, because you're also trying to build the business at the same time, right? You're not stopping everything while you're doing that. You're trying to kind of manage.
Yeah. And like, no shade to solo founders, but I would say like, don't do it alone unless you have to, because you need someone to lean on. Right. Yeah. Like Nadia was our point person for fundraising, and that was like her 100% of the time job when that was happening. And it was my job to support her as best I could and to keep the business going and to keep building the product, because it's really easy to like slip into just fundraising and then you don't have a product. And then eventually those two problems kind of dovetail into this nasty cocktail where you're trying to sell something that doesn't exist.
Yeah, like vaporware. Yes, completely. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
One point on that tip, like for founders, 2 co-founders, don't pull in the second co-founder into the meetings unless it's really important. Like save it for the 3rd meeting. If you think you're really getting traction and all the partners want to meet, that's when you call them in. Don't distract them from their job, which is building the product. So there have been so many times that I was like, oh man, I wish Star was here, but I was like, nope, she's busy.
Yeah. And so, a lot of times there will be a technical co-founder and then more of either a business or a creative or, marketing, you name it, in terms of the co-founder relationship. Because I think you're right, Star. I love how I think there's a growing expectation that there's, co-founders where, there was a time when it was really focused on a founder and then the founder building a team around them. So with you guys, so it's great to hear, like, Nadia, you're like, okay, I am just, focusing on, making sure we have the capital so that everything that we're building, is possible. And Star, you're focusing on like, hey, we need to have something to show these investors, so it's not just, a dream or a pitch about what might come. So in what ways do you think you guys, either from personality standpoint or from a skill set, like a functional skill set standpoint, kind of complement each other? And you kind of had a chance to work together before, so you had a sense of how you might work together. But how would you describe the working relationship, and what would you encourage other people to look for when they're looking for their co-founders?
Well, I think it definitely varies by stage. And to all founders just starting out, know that you will wear many, many hats, and that the ratio to which you wear these hats is going to change, like sometimes even month to month. And, like definitely good to have a point person on things so that decisions get made faster, because if everything is completely egalitarian all the time, nothing would ever get done. But I'd say that Star and I are both creative people. We've both contributed to Hollow Vista on both the individual level and the managerial level. And I just want to call out how many things, I'm going to try to list the number of things Star did on this title, because there's just so many. Star, I'm going to forget, I'm going to list 10 and forget 3. Okay, let's see. Animation, 3D art, modeling, music, by the way, recording and writing and performing said music, character design, production, managing the engineering pipeline, managing the art pipeline, typography, front-end web development, illustration. Hold on. There's more. I know there's more. I'm blanking. Sorry, you do too many things. I'm sorry.
I think the only thing you missed was like video editing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of hats to wear.
A lot.
People always ask me, like, when do you sleep? And now I'm going to have to ask you, Star. And I say, oh, I'll sleep when I'm dead.
Yeah. I mean, like Nadia said, it's different at different phases,
Yeah.
right? Like, you know, Nadia is definitely much better than I am at things like maintaining email contact and schedules. Those are not my strong suits, which is why she was in charge of fundraising. You know, I am the one on the team with like more like graphic design experience, which is why during fundraising I was doing more like, you know, building the product, but also like support for fundraising. So like Nadia would be like, I just got back from this meeting and I need this deck and I need this other thing and I need this other piece of collateral that we don't have. And I need them all to be, you know, printed out because we're meeting in Japan and they want all the materials in front of them. Like, you know, so I would be the one putting together all of those assets for her so that she would have something that like looked professional. And, you know, that's definitely the thing that I tend to contribute the most of, because I have this like graphic design and development background for doing branding and doing websites and all of these things. So,
yeah, I think a big challenge for me as a founder is like putting aside my individual abilities, because as a creative person, like I want to be designing the scenes or, you know, creating the characters. And I'm really proud of my like individual contributions to the project. Like I definitely did a little bit of animation, a tiny bit of writing, a little bit of UX stuff, like, you know, a little bit of art. But you really have to step back at a certain point and learn to delegate. That's a really big stepping stone that every founder must overcome, because you definitely, especially when you're early, have this like, no, like I know I can do it myself. I know I don't want to have to explain it to someone else. It's in my head. I'm just going to do it. And at a certain point, in order to lead, you have to really tell yourself, yeah, I know I can do it, but actually it turns out that I'll have more time to do other things that other people can't do if I delegate these things that I can do.
Yeah.
And that's a tough one. So I'd say that Star and I are in it together creatively, but Star really leads the design and I lead a little bit more on the business, but we're talking like we both switch those roles all the time. And
yeah. And, you know, outside of fundraising, there's a lot more blurriness in who does what, because, you know, we're in a stage where we have the advantage of being able to do that. Whereas like during fundraising or during like shipping, like in the last part of the push, the roles need to be a bit more regimented just because of the nature of the work.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. It's like, you know, like any good parent with, you know, with the kid, right? It's like changing up those roles as the day or the week or the month or the year needs, right? And, you know, looking at, you know, who can do what and who can do what best at that particular moment, what, you know, what you guys really need. So I think the fact that you guys do it so well together to, you know, to get to this stage is something that, you know, I want to commend you for, because I think sometimes it can be, you know, it can be tough. It can be confusing, right? And especially when there's so many unknowns, you know, you're making a lot of guesses together. So not only do you, you know, need that trust in investors, but in each other and also in yourselves, right? Like knowing that you're just gonna do your best and make the best guesses. And if some of those don't pan out, then you make different guesses the next time and you keep doing it until you get it right. But you guys are already getting it right. So you should feel really good. I hope you feel really good. So yeah, I thought so. And kudos to, you know, the rest of the team. I've, you know, had the fortune of like seeing kind of how you guys interact with them. And I think you know, especially when it comes to games and any kind of storytelling, you know, creative teams are really oftentimes great about co-creating. But I think you're right. It's not just about, you know, control and ownership, which, you know, we kind of all love to do because we like to see our ideas, you know, come to life. But knowing that, like, when it's something that everyone kind of contributes to, it's usually a much better outcome, right? It's usually a much better experience at the end. So yeah, so I think we'll probably wrap, but before we do, I want to make sure that people know where and how to get the game and the best ways to reach you guys. Okay, so I know we have the Aconite Twitter handle, but do you want to mention maybe the architecture firm or any of the other Twitter handles that people should follow, or any of the other platforms?
Other things you can check out are the alternate reality game, which is Mesmer and Braid, MESMERAND BRAID. And yeah.
We'll add
that. Awesome.
Yeah, just Google Mesmer and Braid. You'll find some interesting things immediately. Use an ampersand when you Google.
Okay. So we'll make sure that we throw that stuff in there so people can see that. But thank you again for sharing your experiences. And
thank you for having us.
Yeah, of course. I was so excited to have you guys. So I think, you know, your story is a super inspirational one. I think the game is so much fun, and I have to kind of level up. So I'm still in it, and I'll share my experiences going forward. But just wishing you guys just continued success.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Angel.
Thanks. Take care. Bye.